So welcome everyone. This is our third webinar in our series Make Your Move to Japan a Success. Whether you're already here or planning to move to Japan. Today's topic is about building resilience, knowing that Japan is a very unique destination, a beautiful and pretty unique country where the culture can be a challenge and the adjustment as well. So that's the topic for today. And today we have a special guest, so I will introduce you later. And let's switch to the next slide. So a quick introduction. I start, Sandrine? So I'm half French, half Cameroonian, spent most of my time overseas. I grew up in Africa, but I was confronted to change at early age. So this is my sixth expatriation. Basically, I move every 5 to 10 years to a new country. So I'm quite used to change. I'm quite used to what it means to have to rebuild everything in your life, adjust to new country or the struggle that comes along with doing that. But at the same time, the opportunity that are there to grow, to choose what you want to put in your life. And that's exactly the topic of today. So I enjoyed change so much that it was my, let's say, professional role for more than 20 years, supporting transformation with company. I've also been a mentor, supporting women in transitioning to Japan, finding their new purpose, and so on. And this is something that I share with Sandrine. I just wanted to add that because of the overwhelm linked to the change, and because I was exposed to so many change, I also studied psychology, behavioral psychology, to understand what goes on the mindset and how we can easily adjust to change. And I'm also a therapist. I'm a stress management consultant as well. So many topics of interest for me to speak about resilience.
So I'm not a psychologist, I'm an engineer, so I love maths. And thanks to Marie, I got contaminated with the mental health issue. So basically, as Marie, I joined Japan 2 years ago following my husband, leaving my job behind and settling without 2 children. It took me more or less 8 months to settle in, meaning being comfortable with the daily life, grocery, banking, paying bills, and so on. Also make new connections, and some of them become friends. And also find my new professional project, because even if I follow my husband, I wanted to continue to build something, and I have an entrepreneurial mindset. We build Lemon Booth with Marie. And so my background, so it's an engineer in life science. I drove a really strategic project with a lot of change management skills that helps me to adjust to Japan. And now we are happy to share our experience in adjustment.
Okay, so today we have our special guest with us called Misha. So Misha, are you ready to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Mary. Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Misha. I've been in Japan for a little over 10 years now, and came here initially for a study abroad program for a year, and then really loved it. So decided to come back after I graduated university and got a job in HR recruitment, which is one of the few jobs that I could get at the time, and worked with a lot of large tech companies and startups, and just had a lot of fun doing that sort of work in Tokyo. And yeah, I did that for a bit, and then eventually quit and launched my own business, which I ran for a few years, which is an online coaching business.
Yes.
That, yeah, that got me really burned out. So I kind of wrapped up that chapter of my life, and took some time off to meditate and kind of explore. And about 2 years ago, I launched Tokyo Mindfulness, which is a mindfulness meditation retreats and events business. So that's what I've been doing the last 2 years. I've left Japan as well for a couple of years, and I came back. So I have this experience working in Japan in corporate. I've experienced doing my own startup. I've experienced leaving Japan and coming back. And also my wife is Japanese, and now we have a baby boy. So that's a little bit about me.
And you wrote a book about.
Oh yeah, I
Man.
wrote a book about Japan. This is just a book of all of my, well, you can't even see it because my background is kind of blurred, but basically I just interviewed all my friends and people I know and my professional network, and I just made it into a book. So
Yes. And it's interesting to have your feedback because, as you said, you have a Japanese wife, so it's you studied here, and also you left Japan and came back. And I think we also have in the participant people who are maybe also in that situation where they came, they enjoy, and they want to come back. So I think your experience will be really appreciated. And I had the chance to see a little tiny part of the community that you have, and I think you can really, yeah, help people better understand, the struggles that foreigners can experience here in Japan. So thank you for being here with us. The agenda for today, living the dream. When we hear about Japan, it sounds really like a dream. And when you share with your colleagues, that you're going to move and live in Japan, people are generally really, really, yes, they can, I don't know how to say it, but basically they feel that you are lucky, that it's a great opportunity, and it is. But of course, there's dream and then there's reality. We're going to talk about change curve, focus on the different profiles, and then, yes, see what causes the struggles. The slowness of Japan is the topic for today. Living abroad is also another good reason to have struggles. And then we will discuss how we can, what can we do? And we cannot change Japan, but there are definitely things that we can do to change us, maybe. Yeah, so this was just, a quick image to show the reality versus the postcard. Sandrine and myself, we arrived almost 2 years ago. So, of course, compared to Misha, 10 years, there are things that we are still discovering. And I think, Jade, you shared that you've been in Japan for 6 months. So definitely, it takes a bit of time to really get into what it means to live in Japan. And this was just like, you see the skeleton and the time. And Japan has a particular slow pace on some aspect. So of course the train are on time, right, Misha? The country is safe, everything works good.
yeah,
The streets are clean. But I wanted to use that image of the roller coaster because of all the, let's say, the impact of this difference between what we can see either from Western, if we come from, outside Japan, and what it means to see a bit of the background. So I listed here a few of them. So yes, if you move to office, tax office or immigration office, or you need to, do your driving license and this thing, you might have experienced the bureaucratic maze in Japan. If you're in a business or looking for a job where the decision making is really slow, if you are in a sales process, we were taught it's almost 8 to 9 meetings before you can even think of getting an order, if of course you manage to have that. So business negotiations. Japan is famous as well for the long working hours and the work culture, where I think Japanese salarymen spend a lot of time, and the place of the work and the company in the life is definitely not the same as what we can find outside Japan, where we really value our personal time. Here in Japan, I mean, of course, it can vary with the younger generation, but these are the most common situation. Of course, you have a commuting time. Tokyo is as large as a region of Paris and all the neighbors. So if you have to, it takes half a day basically to go to the doctor and come back. And if you have to bring your kids, to any activities. So there are a lot of time spent for sometimes just one activity. Of course, the communication barrier, that's a lot of struggles, because when you struggle, you need to express. And when you can't express because you don't speak Japanese, it will just add another struggle on the existing ones. So it's layers of difficulties. The cost of living in Japan as well is a source of stress, especially with the weak yen. And then the space, moving to Japan means a smaller living space. You may have a house outside Tokyo and enjoy a garden, but this is not for everyone. Misha, would you like to add something? I saw.
Yeah, well, no, I there's so much I can say. I moved into a house recently and we have a garden. And so as you were saying that, I was wondering if you were talking about me. But we also have it's an old Japanese house, so the doors are actually quite short because everyone in Japan was apparently short in the 70s. And so I always bump my head into the door frame wherever I go in the house. But one thing I wanted to say is, you kind of mentioned it at the beginning of the slide, is that you have a lot of positives, but then you also have a lot of challenges. And I think, we all have a negativity bias where we kind of look at the negative more so than the positive. And I think if I were to go down this list, you could also come up with a counterpart that's really positive, right? So, for example, the commuting time is long, but the transportation system is extremely efficient. Business negotiations take a while, but once you do have that contract, you have like loyalty for a long time. And so I think it's nice to acknowledge these differences, but then also recognize that they can actually be really advantages, positive as well.
Yeah, totally agree, because it's important and to remember the intention behind all this. And as you said, it's positive. Sometimes when you wait, because people want to make it perfect for you, so of course it takes time, but in the end the service is a great quality. But when you arrive in Japan and you have to adjust to all this, it seems really difficult. So that's why it's important as well to be informed that the Japan concept of the slow is fast, fast is slow, the deeply, culture about being patient, the careful planning and the attention to detail, which is a good intention and positive intention, will actually translate into delays and sometimes misunderstanding and so on. So that's the context in Japan. So on the next slide, I wanted to focus more on the context of moving to a new country, because you're already in a country where you will have new, you lack your, you lack your habits. Everything is new. It will, most of the thing that will happen will question, because you don't understand why normally it's supposed to take 1 hour and then you have to spend one day, to get your driving license. So all this will create stress, questions, but at the same time moving to a new country. And that's why I wanted to use the change curve. Not sure if you know about this model. Initially, it was designated for the grief. It's also called the grief curve, but it applies actually for any change, any situation that comes with a higher level of stress. And of course, moving to a new country, it applies because you have this curve, right? So you move from the shock, denial, frustration, depression, and then some kind of acceptation where you start to build, then you make the decision, and then really you feel like, I'm part of the country. You have that sense of belonging. So just to be aware that it's not just a move, and it's a non-linear process. Actually, you can go into the depression straight away if all the struggle that we talk about, all the changes, the new way of doing things are too high, or if there was absolutely no expectation on that. Um, it can also depend on your personal situation. If you move to Japan with or without a family, with or without a proper job, uh, for a longer or shorter period, all this, of course, will affect your experience. And as Sandrine shared earlier, it takes almost 8 to 12 months to adjust to this new environment. So by knowing what may come later, you can be more prepared. And what's important here is you see that on the first block where you experience the frustration, what is important is to communicate, to be able to express this frustration. The second one, when you are more in the depression mode, it's the emotional support that will be important. And the last part is the guidance. So you know what kind of needs you have depending where you are in the curve. And the last thing, I check a few statistics on there's a company called Expat Communication in France that do a lot of research on expatriation, and I saw that the mental load is time 2. So when you're already like you're a working mom with 2 kids and you move to a new country, it will be time 2. So if, of course, on top of that, you don't speak Japanese, it's a lot of, definitely a lot of good reason to struggle. So on the next slide, I just wanted to share a few figures about the barriers. So this is also from Expat Communication, and as you can see, the highest is actually for the lack of preparation. You see, it's almost 39% women, men employee. The next one would be the inability to balance family life, and we see that employee, it will be really important. And then the next one will be the difficulty for the spouse to find a job. So depending again on my situation, it's important to know what are the potential challenges that will apply to me, so I can really be prepared and but of course, this depend on your situation. So on the next slide, yes, and as I said, it depends on your profile. So we have identified 5 different profiles. Of course, the resident is a foreigner that lives in Japan, and he may or may not have a Japanese spouse, and you have the one that's already here and the one that's planning to come. So Misha, if you want to go ahead with the resident, the idea is to highlight the source of stress and then what could be the strengths. And in the end of the webinar, we will share more tips about how to build resilience.
Sure, sure. Well, I guess when I came to Japan, I was a resident without a spouse at the time.
Yeah.
And I yeah, definitely felt like an outsider at different times. When I was getting an apartment, it was clear that certain apartments were not for foreigners. And so immediately came across some discrimination. Um, I think at work, I was actually quite lucky. I worked with a lot of foreigners as well, but then talking to certain clients, it was clear that, okay, we would rather talk to a Japanese speaker. And so there was just a little bit of this sense of uh, at times that I was not necessarily welcome, or that people didn't really want to engage with me in certain ways. On the other hand, there were times when people are like super friendly and super accommodating, right? So I had both of these experiences, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Um,
So
aging
at that
challenges.
time, did you speak
Yeah.
Japanese?
At that time, yeah, so I actually did. So I studied in university and I kind of learned Japanese there. And then when I came for work, I already had some
Okay.
proficient level of Japanese. So that was helpful. I think I already knew how to get a phone and a bank account and all the sort of basics.
Mm.
And you know, coming to a new country, any country really, but Japan in particular, where a lot of people don't speak English and it can be hard to make friends unless you are working at a company or at school.
Mm.
Um, you know, getting all that basic stuff done can be quite cumbersome and challenging. And so one thing that just really helped me is really prioritizing those friendships that I already had or making new friendships. Um, and joining different activities to
Yes.
find those people. So
Yes, one challenge
What
would be
should
really how to avoid the isolation and the sense of loneliness at some point.
Sandrine, you're gonna say something?
Yes, with the power harassment at work is also because our visa are depending from the company we are
Sure.
working with. So we're thinking twice before changing from job because we need to make sure that we still be able to work in Japan with our visa. So there's a source also of stress and opportunity for company to have a power harassment on resident.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it really depends on kind of your visa status. So there's a bit of a gray area there, and I won't necessarily recommend this to anyone. Get your own legal advice. But technically, if you have a visa that's been given to you and you quit, let's say a 5-year visa, and then you quit your job after 3 years, well, unless the company is like reporting you to the immigration office, which they normally don't do unless they really don't like you for some reason, then you have another 2 years in Japan to find work, and you can stay here to continue to work or freelance or do whatever you want to do. So I think it's also good to connect with lawyers and find the right,
Mm.
immigration lawyers and
Mm.
accountants and legal professionals to get consulting on your own situation instead of just looking on Reddit and trying to find the answers online, because it's not always accurate. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so next slide maybe. So now that you settle your family here.
sure, yeah. Yeah, so things are definitely a little bit easier. I mean, I've been here for a while, but I think I have a lot of friends who um are maybe they're single, or they don't have a Japanese spouse. And there's a little bit of challenge there because you have to, if you don't speak the language, you still have to figure out all the stuff with the documents and just all the legal and financial stuff. And going, daycares and all of that. It's so much easier if you have a Japanese spouse. So there's there's not really much I can say for that. It's just like you have an advantage. And if you don't have a Japanese spouse, then having Japanese friends, like really what I find is that it's easy as a foreigner to just get in the bubble of just having foreign friends.
Mm.
And it's so easy to isolate yourself in that way. But I guess just encouraging people to branch out a little bit.
Mm.
And they're usually happy to help if you ask them for some advice on something. People are usually happy to help out. Yeah, resident with a spouse. Yes. The strengths of this, I guess, yeah, more immersed in the culture, maybe. I mean, I think a lot of this stuff just depends on your own desire. Like what do you really want to do? Like, do you want to study Japanese? Do you want to go outside of Roppongi and Shibuya and like discover new things? So
Mm.
I don't think it's necessarily limiting or advantageous like either way. If you have a desire to learn about the culture, like you can meet the people and it's not really too different than just being a resident.
Yeah. And what about the gaijin phase that on the long term you still consider a foreigner for maybe for your in-laws and the close family?
Yeah,
Is it something that you can talk
sure.
about?
Yeah, I
Mm.
mean that's still there. That's still there for sure. But I guess there's some level of acceptance that you have for that and um you just sort of get used to it, I guess. Um yeah, there's uh there's definitely more and more foreigners in the last 5 years that I've seen in Shibuya and the convenience stores and just everywhere really. So I think Japan is maybe not necessarily ready for that, but um, there's definitely more. Uh, yeah, there's just more people from abroad, and I think it's getting a little bit friendlier than it was before.
Okay. Okay. So the third slide is on the candidates, the future resident. Um, what what could be your advice for the one that are planning to come and might not be fully aware of what they will find here, especially because I feel like people have this fascination for the Japanese culture,
Hmm.
and we can see that. I can speak about Singapore. People are not fascinated by Singapore. You see, it's an opportunity, sometimes it's a career opportunity, and but people who come to Japan really have something, really dreams, about the culture. So that could be, of course, a good thing, but at the same time, that
Yeah.
fascination versus reality could also come as a
Hmm.
so yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to, yeah, follow your heart and follow your dreams, right? And so if you really want to be here, then figure out a way to get here. But I think there's many different paths, right? And you can be really strategic about it since there's so many people that live in Japan now, and there's so many companies that are hiring foreigners. There's more than one way to get here. It's not just English teaching, and so it might be English teaching at first,
Yeah.
but I have so like in the book I read, I mean a lot of the people I interviewed were actually they started out as English teachers and then they moved to HR or they started their own business or they moved into sales and marketing if they spoke Japanese. And so there's a little bit of um, maybe there's a little bit of ego there, like you don't want to come to Japan as an English teacher. I had this career wherever else.
Mm.
And so, if you really just want to be here, then, if you do have the skills, then get here somehow and then figure it out when you're on the ground. It also can make sense to get marketable skills first,
Mm.
especially if you're younger and you're building up your career, um, whatever job you have abroad. It could be good to get a bit more of that experience before coming to Japan. That way it's easier to find a job here.
Yeah. How long can it
Yeah.
take, to move from like English teacher to the marketing, according to the friends that you interviewed? Was it like 5 years?
No, I mean, a lot of people
Is it?
teach English for a couple of years, and then
Yeah.
it obviously depends on your drive. Like, so I mean, I had one friend who was studying design just on the side, or another friend was studying engineering as he was teaching English, just online, right? And so they would go to Tokyo on, the weekends, or maybe every few months, to network, to meet people, to see what kind of people were hiring, and then, just building a portfolio, whatever that means in your profession on the side.
Yeah, I'm just
Yes.
focusing about the time it takes, because this is what Japan is about. We know that it takes time to build trust, as you said. It takes time. Then after, once the trust is established, then yeah, the relationship, or the professional relationship, will be really like trustful, secured. But if you have to teach, it's something that also important to consider, that if you come and you have to go through the English teacher, that it may still take, I don't know, 5, 6, 3, 4, whatever. It may
Yeah.
still, you may need time, right? So it's really on a long-term view. So that's why I think that the time management here in Japan is something that needs to be adjusted to our own, as you said, our own desire, our own plan, what we are ready to negotiate or what we cannot negotiate, so that it's not too overwhelming and it's not too frustrating on the long run.
Yeah, sure. And there, definitely. And there's also a lot of things you can do other than English teaching, that don't necessarily require a lot of Japanese skills. There are companies here who are hiring a lot of foreigners now, and it's not just engineering jobs or technical roles, but also divisions of companies that have international sales and marketing departments, for Asia or global, right? So it could be at Rakuten or Amazon or whatever, or smaller companies, and they're selling to Asia, or they're selling to North America, and you're just based in Japan doing that, right? Um, and there's also companies that cater, market towards English speakers in Japan. So there's all these things you can find, and if you actually come to Japan as a tourist, or you reach out to people on LinkedIn and just start kind of testing the waters and talking to people, you start to get connected to recruiters, to hiring managers. You start to get connected to different people. If you're just sitting there and looking at stuff online without actually talking to someone, or without actually reaching out to anyone, that information is mostly out of date. Like, all that
Yeah.
stuff has just kind of been there for a few months, and it's, they don't really update the job boards so often, for, apart from the big companies. So
Okay.
there is something to be said about really having those conversations and
Sure.
spending time in Japan,
Right. Being on the field
being on the ground. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So we will talk about that later, because this is really something that will help us build resilience. So on the next slide now, we will focus a
No,
bit more.
I would like to talk.
Sorry, Sandrine, I cannot see you, so
Okay, so okay, so it's good to know. I didn't know that.
yeah.
I had a point regarding accommodation. So as a future resident, you may think, oh, I would choose an accommodation, a location to live in a really Japanese area. And I think it's really stressful, and that if you had the choice, you should choose for a more international area, but some of them are expensive, but you can find a way, because it's also reduce stress to meet other foreigners and to connect with them in your area. Because if you choose a fully Japanese area, it might be more difficult to connect with your
Yes.
neighbors. So choose your accommodation wisely as well.
Yes. And think about being part of the community. This is really important, and we will see that later again when we talk about the how to be resilient. So now the profile personally, I know a bit more, and I think Sandrine as well. So it's the expat. So the expat moves because the company assigned him. So of course he's got a job, and sometimes it's a career opportunity, but that comes as well with a lot of stress, because you need to adjust your way of work to the business culture. And in Japan, you have that slowness in the decision-making process, in the sales process. You have all the nomikai and work culture. So different kind of codes, etiquette, communications, and that could be stressful as well to adjust. You may need to adjust your leadership, because now you are managing Japanese staff, and even though they might speak English, even though they might spend some time overseas, they still have that culture that we need as a foreigner to adjust to. And as a manager or leader, also need to adjust your leadership style. Another, let's say, struggle is on the work-life balance, because the expat move with the family, and the family integration will add more risk, because it's not just only yourself. Now you have your spouse and you have your kids, and they also need to settle properly. There could be integration at school. There could be, as I said, integration with the spouse, but we will focus on the spouse on the next slide. So the expat has also to make sure his family is well, and the work-life balance, so that it can be present to the family and not always busy with work or business trip. Below, I added, you see another figure that is interesting for the expat combarommeter. 39% of single don't fit in. So it's important to see that coming with the family, of course, brings more risk, but at the same time, it's still the let's say a good option, the best option to move, because having the family is, you have that close community and that close support that you miss when you are single, and where your expatriation might fail because of the loneliness, of the difficulty to adjust, and the curve change. Sandrine, you want to add something? Yeah.
Yes, Jade was asking to have some practical strategies for building resilience that as expat we can incorporate into our daily lives.
So on the building resilience, we will, I hear you, Jade. I would like to finish on the profile first, but we will focus on how to build resilience on the following slide. As an expat, if you're the one working, there will be some focus, and if you're the spouse, there will be another focus. So I'm not sure what your question is about. Are you the one working, or are you the one following the spouse? If you can answer in the chat, then I can adjust. In the meantime, a few words about the spouse. Sandrine was sharing, I'm the one following. Okay, so we're on the right slide, and Sandrine and myself are both following spouse. So as a following spouse, the problem would be, of course, you're leaving your job, and you have to recreate everything. Of course, you have to recreate your community, but at the same time, you have to find your what you can do, what's the next career adjustment, what's the purpose if you are unable to work. And this comes with a lot of stress. It can create frustration. As we said, you may not be able to work. The length of the stay is also shorter, so it might not be worth to engage in learning Japanese if you stay here only 3 to 5 years. It depends on, of course, if you have kids, if you have time for that, that will be the best options. But personally, I gave up after 1 year I don't have enough time. I would love to, but I don't have enough time to invest in learning Japanese. So of course, I am exposed to the communication challenges and all the struggle with the, you know, the paperwork and anytime I'm starting to develop a phobia with any new letters that I receive, the large envelope from the official like Japan service, Japan pension service, and
Yeah, that doesn't go away. It doesn't
I,
go away even if you speak Japanese, it's the same.
I don't want to open. I really need to go little by little, like one per week. Otherwise, I cannot handle it. And I remember struggling with the, you know, the little booklet that explains how to sort the garbage when you arrive. It's like 30 pages on the procedure to. So how can we build resilience as a spouse? Of course, the first thing is the community, to be able to connect with your peers and really be able to share about all these difficulties. And that comes with a challenge, because you can't complain when you are as a spouse. If you complain with the family back in your home country, they may not be able to understand. And in Japan, maybe you don't know enough the people. So when you go into networkings or, you know, gathering with foreigners, you don't have that closeness that allow you to share your concern. And your spouse might not be the right one as well, because maybe he's also struggling to adjust on his side, and he might not understand and just say, oh, enjoy. Why are you not enjoying? And you go and you can visit Tokyo, and you can you know, go to the museum and have tea and so on. But if you used to work, you will experience great frustration and that sense of being worthlessness, really. And also you sometimes you are left alone with the kids and the school and all the adjustment that you also have if your kids are attending, I don't know, a Japanese childcare. Then again, the communication challenges. So the workload in as a spouse is heavy, and the frustration might be even heavier because of this lack of purpose. So the expat spouse is the one that really needs support. You have company that provide this support in terms of coaching, in terms of and it's really important to get that guidance, and to choose the network that would allow you to share your struggle and to grow, maybe to take that time to develop some kind of skills and so on. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
wanted to add about career transition and lack of purpose. When we decided to go to Japan, I said, "Oh, that's fine. I'm doing my job as I did in the US, as I did when I was living in the UK. I'm just copy and paste and do the same in Japan." So I didn't know I had to find myself a new purpose, or there was career transition. I was just changing from job, looking for a new one. But then I realized that it takes time, because even multinational company operating here in Japan are working based on the Japanese style. And then you really need to adjust first. And that's why that is a lot of stress, sources of stress, because I didn't realize that I had to find myself a new professional project. So
Yes,
that's
and that requires flexibility, self-knowledge, self-awareness, and all this is the resilience that we will talk about in the next slide. Yes, so just another figure for the spouse. Is it an opportunity or sacrifice to work overseas? So in the last survey, you can see that for 65 women, it's a sacrifice. So this talks a lot about the resilience that we need to go through the you know, the length of the stay. If you're going to stay in Japan for 5 years, thinking, oh, I actually sacrifice my career, that's tough. That's really tough. And that's why to overcome this and overcome all the frustration and not fall into a real depression where you might decide to say, oh, it's not going to work. Let's go back to our home country. This sometimes happen. It's really important to see what you can make the best of this opportunity, and that comes with the resilience that we are talking today. So on the next slide.
Yes, Marie, there are 10 minutes left.
Yes, thank you. I know we are a bit, so just quickly, what we talk about resilience, but I wanted to really take the time to explain what it means. So here you have the 5 pillars, and basically what's important is resilience is a combination of fixing problems, but at the same time acknowledging emotions. Some of us tend to focus on the problem solving, which is good. I need to find a job. Okay, I will do whatever I can. But maybe doing that, I will start to have a less good sleep quality. Maybe I will be an emotional eater because actually I have a lot of stress. But focusing only on the problem and not allowing us to acknowledge the negative emotion that comes along will um, kind of create unhealthy strategies. So focusing on both is what really allows us to adapt in a positive way by learning, by growing, developing self-care, self-awareness, positive relationships, purpose, and mindfulness. So it's important for each profile, depending what's your profile, to identify whether you tend to be a problem solver or an emotional person. I tend to be emotional person, so I've learned to fix problems as well. And the person who focus only on fixing problems have to learn how to acknowledge that emotions as well. So on the next slide, a few tips on how you can adjust to the problem solving here in Japan. So as we said, an important thing is to be proactive and strategic. So it means knowing your needs, knowing your profile, knowing the potential strengths and the potential challenges that you may face will allow you to be more prepared, to look for the proper support that you need. And that's why it's important to identify which person can hear your concern. Not everyone can be not everyone can be able to listen. As I said, if you share your struggle with an expat spouse, if I'm an expat spouse trying to talk to my husband only, he may not be the right person to help me. Maybe he might start to feel defensive because for him it's stressful, saying, oh, why don't you just enjoy this, and so on. So look for like-minded experience, maybe some other spouses, and get that option, that ability to listen from others, share experience, learn from what they've been through, so you can also go through. Join a peer-to-peer network. This is really something that will help share your concern in a safe space where you know that everybody is facing the same situation. So it's much more easy to, uncover those problems, especially when you're an expat where the community is really small. Not everybody wants to, share openly about the struggle. and to prevent difficult situation. I think